Vietnam. He was assigned to Fort Sam, chief nurse for the 45th Field Hospital here. And that included teaching both the doctors and the nurses how to set up a field hospital at Camp Bullis and in the heat with the rattlesnakes and everything. And after he retired, I applied for nursing school and I was accepted, and our two children graduated from Roosevelt High School. Our son went on to obtain his BS degree from Southwest Texas, which has now changed its name, and our daughter graduated from San Antonio College. Don had an opportunity to accept administrative positions in nursing with his background. It would be a better pay, definitely better hours and weekends off, but he elected to take care of his boys, which meant he accepted a position with Heidelberg VA Hospital. He started out in triage, which is the name for the emergency room. And he enjoyed that very much. Don had been exposed to Agent Orange because in 64 and 65 and thereafter, this was used to dry up the vegetation. And even though Don was not in a combat area, the soldiers coming in had it in their clothing, in their hair, and even with latex gloves, he was inhaling it. He was, you know, exposed to it in the emergency room. I mean, that's the first exposure. And eventually, he did develop diabetes. Don was from Indiana. Yes, he was a Hoosier. A quiet, spoken person with a wonderful smile and a great heart. His hobbies were reading, gardening, and furniture refinishing. And he really never complained about anything. He loved family life. He loved watching our children grow, and we always had their friends over. We had a wonderful time watching our children grow up. He retired from I. Murphy Hospital in April of '95. At this time, I would like to pass some pictures. The second one is for selfish reasons. It's my favorite picture. Okay? So, you can pass that around for me. I would appreciate it. And I have another. December the 18th, 1997. My husband had a one-artery bypass. And this surgery was done at Brooke Army Medical Center. He did very well, and he was discharged December the 22nd. He was our Christmas present. Definitely. Misplacing his eyeglasses and the keys occurred from time to time, but it happens to all of us. I didn't think much about it until one Saturday after we finished breakfast and he was reading the paper, drinking his coffee. I said, Don, I'm going to 8 o'clock mass and I'll be right back. I did that all the time. And he said, okay. When I returned, he looked upset, and he said, where have you been? I've been looking and looking for you. I took a deep breath, and I thought, did he have a TIA? What is going on? And I said, you know, Don, today is Saturday, and I go and attend 8 o'clock mass. And I came right back, and but he looked bewildered. And so the first chance I had, I called a family doctor who was an old family friend of ours because he had been stationed with my husband in the ER at Fort Hood. And he told me, stay close to him, and Monday I want to see him first thing. He will be my first patient. And he did work him in. We were seeing
pretty quick, Monday. After talking to him, he wrote down a list of tests that he wanted my husband to have at BAMC. And in a soft voice, he told me, might be Alzheimer's, Ruth. And I just, you know, I thought, he hasn't run any tests. I'm not going to take him serious. But after we went to BAMC and they ran the test, and the last test was a psychological test, I was called in, and the doctor said, I have some bad news for you, Miss Rand. Your husband's in the beginning stage of Alzheimer's. This particular day changed my world. My thoughts were several. I can take care of him. I was very cavalier. I will make a care plan. I will hire lawn service. I will get someone to help me 1 day a week with the house. I don't see a problem. However, the future included addressing all of Don's health issues. Nutritious meals on time, hygiene, medications, insulin, finger sticks, the early stages of Alzheimer's really proved a challenge. I soon learned that my cavalier attitude did not include that the job was going to be 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That was not easy. It was heartbreaking because he already had Agent Orange, and I knew now that things were starting to happen that it was not going to get better. I took care of him at home by myself for 8 years. There were some funny times because I had to watch him like you were a toddler. I showered him. We had a bench for him to sit on, and after I showered him and shampooed him, I said, honey, why don't you wash the inside walls of the shower and I'll brush my teeth, because every minute I had to take advantage of to do something for myself, basic something. And so I was busy brushing my teeth. He opened the door and he showered me too. I said, no, Don. Of course there was water everywhere. But he had, the second picture, he had that wonderful smile. And I thought, oh, let him have his fun. You know? I mean, there are things that you take serious and things that you just say, well, you know, this is the way it is. He started having episodes in the evening of falling. And my son, who lived 5 streets down, worked nights. So what I would do when he fell was, I couldn't pick him up because he was a tall fellow. So I would put a pillow under him and a pillow next to him and leave a message for my son. Son, don't go to bed. Your father has fallen and I need you to pick him up when you get back home at 6:30 in the morning. And so we both slept on the floor because I didn't want him to be scared. And this continued. And from a Sunday to a Monday, overnight, I couldn't get him out of bed. And because he had, his bladder had been affected by his diabetes. It was a spastic bladder. And I had taken him to 2 outstanding urologists. And ordinarily, they would have been able to help him, but they needed some history from him. And he had Alzheimer's, and he wouldn't be able to remember. So they asked, well, actually they suggested that a Foley catheter would be the best for him and for me. And I said, I'm sorry. there will be no Foley catheter put in. I said, but it's going to be more work. And I said, yes, but he's a diabetic. And I could irrigate the Foley catheter as you require. But it's a foreign matter. He's a diabetic, and the chances for infection are great. So I thank you, but he will be wearing diapers. And he did. We had large incontinent pads, and in between I put bath towels and layered it. And then I figured that if we didn't drink any liquids after 6 in the evening, maybe things wouldn't be too bad, and then I would double up his diapers. But he's a diabetic. And, you know, he was soaked. So, after that and the falling occurring a bit more often, I went ahead and took him to the emergency room because I was afraid that he might end up with a fracture, and that would really complicate things. Not my hard work, but they would not recommend him staying at home because he needed more attention. So I took him to the ER, and they examined him, and they suggested that he stay in the hospital 7 days. And that was to rule out Parkinson's on top of everything else. Well, he responded to the medication in 5 days, and that was good. But what followed was not. The doctor said, it's not going to get better, Mrs. Rand. I recommend that he be placed in a nursing home. Well, it's times like this that you feel that somebody has thrown you with a bucket of ice water, and you don't expect this to happen. Because you see, you have a dream. The dream is to grow old with this wonderful person. And this is interrupting that dream. Surely I'm having a bad dream, I thought. Heavenly Father, this can't be happening to Dawn. Please let this be a bad dream. But it isn't. It wasn't a bad dream. Dawn would run off when I went with him to the grocery store. And once he ran in front of a vehicle. Thank God the man was looking for a parking space, and he was driving very slow, but it scared the man to death, and it just devastated me. This was the second time something like this was happening. So I alerted our children, and I said, I won't be able to go shopping with your daddy, even limited shopping, because this has happened and now this has happened. So I'm going to ask you on Saturday or Sunday, whenever you're available, to come and sit with your dad while I do my shopping. And they did. They loved their dad. They sacrificed a lot. They sacrificed their social life. They sacrificed doing their housework on weekends. They sacrificed a lot, and they did it lovingly and willingly. And I had never had to ask them to do anything as compelling and sad as this. And I am very proud that they stepped up to the plate. And I still remember all the wonderful things that they did. When Don was in the nursing home, unfortunately, the aide neglected to put the belt on the wheelchair that he was in, and she left the room, and Don stood up, took some steps, fell down, broke his glasses, fractured his clavicle, and several of his vertebrae. When they called me, I beat the EMS to the nursing home because it was very close to the house. And to say that I was disappointed and everyone was putting it mildly. It broke my heart that someone that had worked there, an aide, several years, would leave a person without a safety belt. All that was required, if she couldn't work it, was wheel him to the nurse's station where there would be help. She failed to do this, and she caused all these additional problems. Monetarily, the insurance benefits sheet showed me it was over $8,000. And so I went with him to the emergency room, and they took care of him, and we returned to the nursing facility around 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was very interesting because no one spoke to us. They walked in, took his vitals, and he had had a head injury, he had fallen. And you would think that someone would say, we're going to be checking him throughout the night for dizziness, for nausea. We will be here. No. And so as they were leaving the room, I said, I'm spending the night here tonight. And I stayed awake, and I'm a sleepyhead, but you know, there's times that God gives you adrenaline that you don't even realize you have. And I stayed awake, and I would wake him up, and I talked to him, but no one ever came, and I was so disappointed. So the children knew what had happened, and they also knew that I was not going to leave them alone. So it was on a weekend, so they spent the day. One of them spent Saturday, the other one spent Sunday, and then I called one of my dear friends from Army days, who was a registered nurse, and I said, this and this has happened. I want to find another facility for my husband. And her job had been with the state of Texas as an inspector of nursing homes. So she said, I'm coming. She was driving from Goliad, Texas, technically. And she did, and we found a place. And I didn't write a letter of concern. I didn't go to an attorney. I didn't seek litigation. And some people thought that I should have, because the neglect could be going on to other patients. But you know, the truth of the matter is my husband's safety and well-being was more important. I had to address that. And we did find a place, and he remained there for 4 years. He was not able to speak anymore or feed himself anymore. And the nursing home was set up in this fashion. Distribution of meals. There are people in the halls, people that remain in their rooms. Their trays were dispensed first. Then the people that were in the dining room. And then they had a table set up for what they call the feeders, the people that needed to be fed. So one aide would be sitting between two people to feed him. Well, it was beyond the time that he was supposed to eat and get his insulin shot. So I would be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we would have coffee together, and then when the trays came out, I would feed him then myself, and applied for lunch and supper. And if I had a doctor's appointment or something, I managed to do it when the children could fill in for me. And Don, to our knowledge, while he was there, suffered several strokes, had some seizures, had an episode of vomiting blood, and for all of these, he was sent to Brooke Army Medical Center. And things were going down, you know, things were happening to him. And the truth of the matter was that I was in denial. I kept thinking, you know, tomorrow things are going to be better. And sometimes they were, and sometimes they weren't. I cared for Donald very, very much. I loved Donald. And even though he couldn't speak to me, when he saw me, that second page smile is what I got. And that was worth a lot. I was always hugging him and kissing him. And the nursing staff labeled us the kissing bugs. And that was all right. But I wanted him to have a sense that irregardless of how things were going, that he was trapped in a body and couldn't communicate, couldn't do anything for himself. He was loved. I always held his hand. We always said prayers together at night. I always told him how much I loved him, the children loved him, and that he was always in our prayers. And we went ahead and got a little CD player, and my daughter, who had majored in child development, chose children's lullabies. And after we had our prayers at night, I would put the earphones on low, so this would rock him to sleep, hopefully. And when they came to check him, they would remove the earphones, and he would be able to continue with his sleep. In the Army, there's a saying that the toughest job in the Army is that of an Army wife. Ladies and gentlemen, no. The toughest job is being a caregiver. Not because of the hard work, and it is hard, to see your loved one deteriorate before you and being so helpless. There are little comforts that you can do, the body pillows that I bought for him, the sleeves that I ordered for his arms, irregardless of my being told, Mrs. Rand, they're $22 a piece. I said, I understand. I want 2 sets for each arm. One for him to wear, and then when I needed to change the next day, I can take them and launder them myself. I did all his laundry because they tend to have a tendency to lose things. You know, there's so many people, it's hard to do. And I would take these sleeves to protect his skin because his skin got very thin. And I know in my heart, and I have evidence, that he was never, ever abused. But even picking his arm and adjusting his arm would leave an imprint. They didn't hit him in any fashion. I'm really sure of that. But his skin, you know, needed protection. So we got the sleeves, and there were other problems. And so when you see in your career the patient and the family, that the family is there, supportive, be aware that there are other problems. During this period of time, our only daughter at the age of 35 was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she was single, so she came to recuperate at our house. At the age of 43, during this period, our son had a heart attack. So it's hard to be strong when the people you love the most have been addressing some very serious problems. And you're just one person, and you're trying to be of some help to all these wonderful people. The person that you married, your best friend, and the people that you brought into this world that you love very much. So, faith is what carries me from day to day, even now. In the Catholic religion, we have what we call adoration, which is a day that you choose, a time that you choose to just sit in the chapel, read the Bible, pray, meditate, say the rosary, or just sit and visit with God. And in my case, I would often tell God, you know, you really have filled my platter. And I've heard the story about you give people what they can handle. Well, Heavenly Father, I'm turning it all to you because I'm at the end of my rope. This is devastating me. I have to turn it to you because you can do miracles and your timing is better than mine. You know about the future better than I will ever know. And so I'm putting it in your hands. And I said that over and over again, and I kept thinking that tomorrow would be a better day. Hospice was assigned to Don for 6 months. And our lovely lady, Dr. Sandra Oaks, was one of his physicians. She gave me much strength. She was kind, she was gentle, she was very honest. And I respect that because there's a certain amount of denial that we all go through. But she laid the cards on the table and she told me, Miss Rand, I've been reviewing your husband's records and I see how things are going, and I feel that it is time for you to tell your husband it's all right to go to heaven. You're going to be all right. The children are going to be all right. You have permission. Your family's in heaven. And I couldn't respond to anything after that. And I went home very angry. Angry that I was put in this position. I was not God. I relied on God. I wasn't going to tell my husband, it's okay, Don. You know, we're going to make it without you. I thought, can't do it. And I told the children that, and they didn't have a response. I talked to his family, and they sympathized with the position I was in, but they had no response. It's a very personal thing. I couldn't expect anybody in the family to say, you should, that's the thing to do. You shouldn't, you know. So several months went by, and my dear friend Donna Dudley, who's also presenting, and I were attending this class that Dr. Lewis was instrumental in coordinating. And I kind of mentioned that to her, and in her wonderful Ray, she explained the reality of what Dr. Oaks had said, that many times patients hang on because of their loved ones. And I went home thinking, okay, Dr. Oaks has suggested this, Dr. Lewis has confirmed this. If I really love him, and he's endured 11 years of deterioration, then I will have to step up to the plate. Before our evening prayers, I will tell him that if he wants to go to heaven and be with his mom, who had died when he was 7 years old and really didn't get to know her, and be with his dad and my parents and his sisters, that it would be okay. Well, I asked him, did you understand what I said, Tommy? That it's okay to go visit your family in heaven. And he nodded, yes. But it was, I guess, 5 minutes before things happened. I was getting ready to leave one evening after praying with him, and hospice was taking care of him. And the nurse said, I'll walk you to the elevator, Miss Rain. And I thought, something's coming. I said, okay, that'll be nice. And I kissed my husband goodbye. I said, I'll see you in the morning. And the nurse told me, Miss Rand, your husband's vitals are bad. He's deteriorating. His systems are breaking down. We can't shake this fever that he's had for 2 days. He's had rectal suppositories. We've given him ice packs. And so I want you to know how things are. And I surprised myself. And I said, okay, I'm spending the night. He said, don't you want to go home and get clothing? I said, no. I said, I'll buy a toothbrush from the nurses and I'll use my husband's toothpaste. It'll be all right. And I'm a sleepyhead, because when I did my rotation, my night rotation as a nurse, even the instructor said, how much longer do you have, Miss Rand? Because you look real tired. and I'm not a night person. I need my sleep. But you know, the nurse incorporated what he was doing to my husband and asking me to help. And before I knew it, it was 6:30 in the morning, and our children and their spouses were there. And there was a change of nurse, and my daughter was always Daddy's girl. And the minute she came in, she sat with him and held his hand until it was time to eat lunch, and then I held his hand while she ate, and we changed positions again. And she said to the nurse, and the nurse had just checked my husband, excuse me, but my dad's breathing has become very shallow. So the nurse jumped up from the chair there and checked my husband. And I have so much respect for anyone that works in hospice. She handled the situation beautifully, and by her example, it helped me. She put his hands together after she had checked his breathing. There was no breathing taking place. Put his hands together and turned around and told us, Colonel Rand has gone to heaven. He went very peaceful. He never demonstrated any pain or discomfort. And throughout the whole day, the children and I reminded him that we loved him very, very much. and he would always be in our prayers. Everyone was really wonderful in helping us on the floor. Our daughter is the type that has to keep busy when something happens, so she started packing his things, and the staff came in and said, whatever you need in boxes or carts or anything, let us know. There is no hurry in emptying the room. You can take 2 or 3 days, not a problem. But Christine, our daughter, she had to be busy, and her husband and my son. And then they asked us to step out of the room because people from the funeral home were there. And a few minutes later, they took the stretcher downstairs, and as they were heading for the elevator, I told the children, you know, your father, growing up, has been alone a whole lot. I'm going to walk with him to the hearse. He will not be alone. The days that followed were very busy days. We had done a lot of preparation when he was diagnosed early on with Alzheimer's. We had called our attorney and told him about my husband's diagnosis, and we had asked him to reserve a block of time for us because we wanted to redo the will, the directives, have everything in place that needed to be in place, because I wanted my husband's input while he was able to do it. And I wanted to respect his ideas. We had prepared that. Long ago we had done the prepaid burial, so that was not a problem. My daughter had advised me the night before he really got more serious to call his family in Indiana. And I really didn't want to, because every time he had a turn for the worse, I would call him, and then I would call him again, everything's fine. And this went on and on. And I said, I don't know, Chris, you know, Daddy can pull through. But this time I did listen, and I called them, and I'm glad I did, because the ones that could drove nonstop from Indiana, and they were wonderful support. They've always been very loving to us, and I respect them very much, because we were 2 different cultures, 2 different religions. I'm from the city, he's from the farm community, yet they are wonderful people, always have been, very welcoming. And even though I was the only Catholic in church, I started a trend. Within 25 years, there were 4 more Catholics that joined the family. So that was good. But they were very supportive of me. And after the military funeral, we had a brunch. And one of the things that have helped me so much when I feel blue, and it's been 3 years, and you'd think I would be a little bit more in control. But one of the nieces very wisely told me, Aunt Ruth, you're going to miss Uncle Don a lot because y'all were married a long time, and you're going to be sad off and on a lot. But just remember that Uncle Don is in heaven with his mom and dad, and they have so much catching up to do. His aunts will be there, his sisters will be there, your parents will be there. And he's right there with God. And what a perfect place, because he's not suffering anymore, and he can speak and he can walk without assistance, and he will be waiting for you, but he's having a great time catching up with all that was missed when they departed to go to So, in closing, I will say, I will quote Dr. Sharon Lewis, to take a lot of pictures is what we were advised to do, because this will help with making memories. And I did take a lot of pictures. I will also say that even though I had 11 years to get prepared, 11 years of this illness, the truth of the matter is, you're never prepared. You are never prepared, and it's so final. Being in the service, as a service wife, when we were going from one place to another, going to Japan, we read up on it, we looked forward to it, we prepared for it, and I treated the rest of our life the same way. And I was prepared to take care of Don. But the road isn't always straight. It has a lot of bumps, things that you don't expect. And so, in closing, I would like to share this with you. We do not remember the days. We remember the moments. And life is a gift. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much again for choosing a health profession. Be tolerant of the family members. There are financial problems. There are family members within the family nucleus that are sick, cancer, heart attack. It's very hard. Life is wonderful. We have a lot to be grateful for. The basics of being able to feed yourself and drive and take care of yourself are things we take for granted. Not anymore. I have learned so much from taking care of my husband. Thank you so much for attending. I hope that I covered some of the things that you might encounter. Thank you very much for inviting me, ladies. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to
Anybody
answer.
has any questions?
The other problems that faced me were that even though my husband had a medical disability, Agent Orange exposure, and he was 100% disabled, I regret to say that even though we were required by the VA to take my husband every 6 months to be checked, they never told me that they could help pay the nursing bill. When you're faced with a bill of $4,000 a month, you have to really budget. You have to be frugal. You have to be creative. Fortunately, my husband was retired from the military as a lieutenant colonel, so we used that money. Fortunately, he retired from civil service. We had to use all that money. He had a Social Security check. We used that money. And we used some of our savings. So I lived on my pension from UT Health Science Center and my Social Security. By accident, a wonderful angel at the nursing home, another caregiver, in the course of a conversation, she was very upset because her husband was so bad. He was a dust-off pilot in Vietnam and had crashed 3 times and had serious head trauma. And now he was just a vegetable. But sometimes he had his good moments. That particular day, he was just, poor John, he was just in bad shape. he wasn't talking to her, he was frowning, didn't want to eat, and, you know, it hurts the family members to see something like that. And so she just walked off from the table and walked by me, and she said, you know, it's a good thing the VA is paying the nursing bill, because I would not have a home or furniture in order to meet the bill. And I said, what did you say? She said, my husband's 100% disabled, and the VA pays. Doesn't the VA pay for your husband's care? I said, no ma'am, we pay. And she told me, and she's my angel to this day, she told me, run, do not walk to the social worker's office. And I took my husband's wheelchair and all, and went up there, and I knocked on the door, and I said, Jack, I know you've got 10 minutes before you go off duty, but can you help me, can you advise me? I said, my husband is 100% disabled as a result of Agent Orange, and is there a chance that the VA will pay any portion of it? He said, aren't they paying it all? I said, no, sir, I'm paying it. And he looked it up in the computer, and he said, I'll get back to you tomorrow. He said, because the VA office is closed between 4 and 4:30. And at noon the next day, he called me, and he said, what do you want to hear, the good news or the bad news? I said, I want to hear the bad news. And he said, I wanted to make it retroactive to when you admitted your husband here, but they turned that down. But the good news is, starting next month, they are going to pick up the bill. So, this is the way things happen. I know that things fall through the cracks. I know that. And I know that probably it wasn't done intentionally. But anyone else that didn't have the income that we had, what choices would they have? You know, it was just a miracle that Nancy came upset with her situation, and one thing led to another, and I didn't have to worry about the bill anymore. But I thank God there were angels along the way, human beings that in so many ways helped me. How did this come about, that this lady would say what she said at this particular time, and that I was there? You make your own, draw your own conclusions. But I have always, every time I see her, I thank her. And I've given her an angel, a willow angel, because that's what she meant to me. I can never repay her. You know, $4,000 times 3.5 years. And now it's gone up to $5,500 for semi-private. So, I accept what has happened the best way I can. I've bargained, I've been angry, I've been in denial. But I met a lot of people that have had it rougher than I have. I've met people that, one of my neighbors, as a matter of fact, she and her husband were sitting watching TV in the living room at the end of the evening, and he bent forward, and she thought he was either removing his shoe or untying his shoe, or tying his shoe. And he came up. So she moved his shoulder, and he killed over. He had a heart attack. And she never had the chance that was given to me, as I understand it, as a gift of 11 years of showing my husband that his family cared for him a lot. Doris didn't get that chance. And my other friend that I met in a grief group, she said her husband and her son went to the backyard to cut down a tree. The next thing you know, her son was hollering for her to call EMS. Her husband had a heart attack. No notice. So, yes, it's been very rough. But when I hear these other stories, I say, you know, God has blessed me. He has given me time. It hasn't been quality time. It hasn't been the time that I wanted to have to grow old with him, but it was time. And life is interesting, and you're going to be exposed to a lot of things.
5 more minutes left.
Okay, do you have any questions? Anything that you might be interested in have covered?
What have you done for your own health? You know, as a caregiver, you have to take care of him as well. But what did you do with your time to take care of yourself? What have you done since?
I only had one thing, and that was to go to adoration on Monday. From 10 to 11, that was a perfect time because at 11:30 they would start serving food. And I do want to touch on something that I really didn't believe that was covered with Dr. Lewis's course, and that is the caregivers suffer medical problems. It affects our immune system. And I kind of couldn't understand that. But all of a sudden, I have reflux, I have diverticulitis, I have Crohn's disease. And there's no history in my family of anything but diabetes. So it does catch up with us. And I do go to exercise class once a week. I do volunteer work. I help the Catholic chaplain at BAMC. They just transferred the pediatric oncology from Wilford Hall to BAMC, and they needed some Christmas decorations, and my friends and I pooled our funds. They didn't even have a coffee pot, and so in memory of my husband, I got a big coffee pot with coffee and filters. And so we got Christmas trees that were approved by the military, and we got garland. My friends and I, not just me. And one of our friends that owns a company, she brought, I think it's called a Wii computer game, which is quite expensive, and she's donated it for the children. So that makes me feel good. And even before my husband died, we collected books and magazines for the hospital patients at BAMC, and now I just have a container, and the neighborhood association supports me, and there's lots of paperback books that I can share with them. I push paperback books because the patients can put them in the pockets of their bathrobes while they're going from appointment to appointment. For a magazine, it's a little bit cumbersome, but I welcome both of them. And I also take magazines to the McDonald House and to Park Lane, where my husband was. And aside from that, I belong to the Red Hat Society, and it's made up of 90% widows. And I help at church. So I cut back a little bit on my activities. My neighborhood president selected me to represent District 2. We're under Ivy Taylor, Councilwoman Ivy Taylor, to do a study on the seniors task force. Mayor Castro is projecting 20 years down the line as to what our needs and interests will be. It's not all just plain bingo. The new generation wants to do exercise, they want to do dancing, they want to do art, and they want to have fun. But I did that for a while, but it entailed a lot of travel. So I apologize and turn in my resignation. So I am keeping busy.
Did the geriatric, did you guys have anything you want to share?
The story was so complete. Thank you very much for sharing that story.
Thank you. You all have been so gracious and supportive.
You took us through all your life and through all your experiences with your husband, and we've been experiencing that very vividly. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your experience with us. We really appreciate it.
I never dreamed I would be doing the things that I've done the last 11 years, but it has been my privilege, definitely, to be